Salamat Pagi. Good morning in Malaysia, where they speak Malay. I'm learning something. Good morning, everybody. Hope your day starts out well, or whenever you're doing this, I hope that you had a good day. Yesterday was beautiful outside. We got to go over to help with Ellie, and my daughter lives in Winona. She's going to school over there, and so we helped her a little bit and got a little color in my face from working outside. So we had a great day yesterday. Hope you did too. Today's another day, and we get to read. It is day 36. It's Monday, May 4th, and we're going to be reading Psalms 120 through 124 and Ephesians 1 through 2. We're starting a new book today, and we'll talk more about that. So the verse that really stuck out to me yesterday was in Romans 13:8. It says, "Let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law." Means if we can get that loving other thing down, we're good to go. We can love God, but we got to love other people too. Very good verse. All right, let's look at these psalms. A lot of these are called ascent psalms. That means as they ascended, as they went up to Jerusalem. Jerusalem's up on a hill, Mount Zion. So as they ascend up, they would sing these songs as they entered Jerusalem and as they would go to the temple to worship. The first one is Psalms 120. This is a prayer of an individual asking God for deliverance from false accusers. Again, we get to see a lot of these. He feels so overwhelmed. It's interesting in there. He turns a phrase. He's so overwhelmed by these accusers that he feels like he's living in a foreign land surrounded by barbarians. That's a really good emotional image. That's good. Emotional imaging is really good when, especially like in any kind of relationship, as you communicate how you feel. And that's how he's feeling. He's feeling overwhelmed. Okay, Psalms 121 is one of these ascent psalms. It was sung as they went up to worship, like I mentioned before. Song's theme is the assurance that we have in the Lord. It was meant to instill confidence in people as they went up to worship. Psalms 102, another ascent psalm. This was a hymn of joy over the opportunity that they had to go to Jerusalem and then go to the temple to worship. It was a privilege to worship God. Psalms 123 is a song of ascent again. This one's asking God to show mercy. It was a communal song, and it's probably when they're experiencing trouble, or maybe an enemy is threatening them or accusing them, but it was meant to ask God for mercy. And then the last Psalms 124 is a song of thanksgiving. They were delivered from something, and so they praise God that he helped. And so some really interesting psalms. These are shorter psalms. These are songs that were meant to be sung, of course. All right, Ephesians. Give you a background on Ephesus. Ephesians is written to the church at Ephesus. Ephesus was one of the most important cities in Asia Minor, which is modern-day Turkey, but it was also the top 5 city in the Roman Empire. It was right on a riverway, and so there was a lot of trade that came through. It was a very wealthy city because of that. It was also the host of the great temple to Artemis. That's one of the 7 wonders of the world. And that religion had been around for hundreds of years, back in 500, 600 BC that started there. So that was the centerpiece of the life at Ephesus. The city had been around for 1,000 years. Can you imagine a city that long? The oldest one in the United States is 400 years, but a city of 1,000 years. And so because of the influence of Artemis in that city, people would travel on their pilgrimages, and they would come and they would buy idols. They would go up and visit to the temple. Then they also bring their trade as well. So the Apostle Paul went there on his 3rd missionary journey about AD 53. And we can read about that. We read about that in Acts 19. Go back and read so you can get the background of this text that we're going to be reading now. Now, Paul preached Jesus, and it caused quite an uproar, if you remember the story. And the idol makers were concerned that he was going to wreck their business, so they almost had him killed. It's interesting to note that there was this huge stadium in that city. It sat 25,000 people. It was built about 500 years before Paul was even there. And so it was a great big stadium city. So Paul lived there for about 2 years and basically evangelized all that the churches that started in that Asia Minor area in modern-day Turkey. It was also noted that the Apostle Paul lived there in AD 70 until he was exiled to the island of Patmos. And after exile, he came back on the island of Patmos. He recorded the book of Revelation. And in there, the very, very beginning part of Revelation, he talks about the 7 churches of Asia Minor. These are churches that are all connected to Ephesus. And so after exile, now those churches, I should note that when Paul was there, the churches are really healthy, but when John's writing, they're struggling a little bit. That's what that chapter is about in Revelation chapter, in the beginning of Revelation. It's also tradition that Mary, the mother of Jesus, went to live with John, and that's where she died, was in Ephesus. John was going to be taking care of her, and that's where she went. So, interesting city. The themes of the book of Ephesians. Grace is talked about over and over again. The big key is the unity of God's family, that the Gentiles and the Jews have to get along. We are family now. We are one in Christ. God's not only restoring the world, but he's restoring humanity into that one nation of people once again. And so the word love is used many, many times in the noun. So the Greek word that he uses is agape, and in the noun form and the verb form, he uses it over 19 times in this book. So he's serious about love here, folks. He also talks about living for Jesus. He talks about family, how we are to love and respect each other in marriages and families. And then the last part in Ephesians 6 is a really good chapter on spiritual warfare, that everything that's happening around us is because there's a spiritual battle going on for our soul. So this is going to be a really good book to read. We're only going to spend 3 days on it because there's only 6 chapters. So read it slow, but gobble it up. Ephesians 1, just very quickly, just because of time reasons, he begins by praising God for all of our spiritual blessings. That's a beautiful section there to remind us of what we have in Christ. And then he thanks the Ephesians and writes a beautiful prayer for them, just praying that they would grow in their faith. Ephesians 2, he talks about that we were made alive in Christ. He's building a theological argument to get to the point in Ephesians 2, verse 11, where he says, therefore. So whenever there's a therefore, you need to look back at what he's talking about, because the next section is going to be in response to what's said. And so he builds up, talks about who we are in Christ, the blessings we have in Christ, praises for the church, and then that we are made alive in Christ. Therefore, and then he says, you need to get along with each other, Jews and Gentiles. You need to love each other because of what Christ has done. He's created us into a new people. All right. Have a good day today, and enjoy your reading. I'll see you tomorrow. Just a few days left. We'll be done by the end of the week. Hold on. We'll get through.